Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member. For those of you not as familiar with Campbell, we have been in business since 1953, and we do currently manage over 450 community associations from Miami-Dade up to Orlando now. So we are now servicing Orlando, Cocoa Beach, Daytona, that entire area. And so we are happy to bring our services to that area. We love bringing educational events to you in the form of these webinars. You can always view our upcoming and also our past webinars at campbellevents.org. And you can always check out our blog, Florida Association News, at readfan.org.
Thanks, Ashley. Let's get this, let's see here. All right, how are we doing there? Is that showing
Yeah,
up?
looks good. I see it.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, good afternoon. And today I want to thank you for joining. This is a Florida Friendly Landscaping CEU class. I do appreciate you joining today. I know this is your lunch hour, and there probably are much more exciting and better things to be doing right now. So those that are here for educational purposes, I appreciate it. And my name is Shane Humble with Complete Property Maintenance. I'm just going to try to go through today's course as in layman's terms as simple as possible, and look forward to potentially any questions either at the end or if we've got time in between slides. If I see a lot of things pop up, I will try to get to them, understanding that maybe we're looking for more information at that topic. So again, thanks for joining, and let's go ahead and get started. So, Florida friendly landscaping, or the principle that was originally kind of termed best management practices, kind of came up in around 2004. It created a section 373.228, and it was a statute that directed the Water Management District as well as the DEP and other interested parties to come up with a standard for landscape irrigation and landscape design. And interestingly enough, prior to that, there really wasn't. It was kind of the wild, wild west. There was no codes, nothing specific that applied to landscape installation, design, principles. Not to say that, landscape architects weren't designing and creating amazing spaces. It just wasn't that there was one completely derived around Florida-friendly landscape or native material, or other kind of selections that could have been made that would enhance what our typical climate is. So it came up in 2004, but in 2006, it's when it became officially adopted, and a lot of local ordinances after this date were required to start using these standards. So the 6 standards or principles that encompass Florida-friendly landscaping are below. As you can see, they are putting the right plant in the right place. And we're going to touch on each of these a little bit more as we go through the presentation. The use of efficient watering, making sure we apply the right amount of fertilizer and the actual appropriate fertilization for what you are intending it to go to. Why we mulch, the pros and cons, the attraction of wildlife, as well as the responsible management of pests. So, what are the 6 principles, and why do they make up what is now termed the BMPs, or our best management practices? So, it's to try and minimize the environmental impact, yet meet a client or customer's expectations. This typically comes down to a builder, developer, whether it be a retail space, shopping plaza, mall, bank, gas station, or an HOA or a condo association. The difficulty comes in a balance of utilizing the footprint of the space given to accommodate parking, pedestrian traffic, landscape requirement, runoff, and as well as letting the developer kind of maximize their revenue or profit potential, and making it as attractive as possible. So what does the Florida-friendly landscape include? What embodies that term? It usually is a selection of trees, ornamentals, a lawn of turf grass or another type ground cover. And the term itself refers to native plant material. They need to be well adapted, non-invasive. They can be shrubs, ornamentals, palms, trees that are not only going to be more efficient with the use of fertilization or water, they're also going to bring that right balance of beauty, whether it be an area that has more light or shade, whether it's controlling a habitat, a erosion on a lake bank, or reducing noise to a nearby or surrounding community, as well as modifying the temperature from turning in what may have been a forest or a preserve area into a parking lot. Uh, right place for the each individual plant. So you the term is right plant, right place. So this is going to refer to the selection or the location of those material and how it's been laid out. So after weather, the kind of the next largest practice that we've got to adhere to is not only cultural, but it's the success of the agronomic program. And what do we mean by that? It's the material that's selected and then making sure it can be mowed at the right height. It can be pruned in a manner that brings attractiveness to the building or allowed to grow to hide certain sections of a building, maybe the backside where the trucks come in and load, unload, uh, utilities, etc. We need to be able to apply fertilization so that it can actually get to the root system, as well as a underground structure of irrigation, so that we can, have longevity with, the actual infrastructure. So all of these components, they definitely sound different, but they are for sure related. For example, if you were to fertilize during a drought period, this may lead to heavy leaching when we actually get our typical summer rains. Yet an inadequately fertilized material will lead to thin, weak plants, a weakened root system. This would then become more susceptible to insect or disease. And those weakened plants, they don't have that root system, which will then further relate to an issue in retaining the soil in the root zone, or if it was used to help hold back on a slope for any erosion. And again, that will lead to erosion and potential water pollution. By the way, this site here doesn't exist anymore. This was a Gander Mountain site right off of 95, and I think it's North Lake behind a Home Depot there. I featured them in this. I think now it's like a in home, or it's like a, kind of like a college dorm type, get ready sheets, bedding, pillows, chair, all that kind of stuff. But the way that it was designed was really clever, how it hid sections of the building, the um, the way the parking lot was designed, the transition was just phenomenal. I was always impressed when that build came up, so hence the pictures of it, and I continue to use it because there's not a whole lot other that have been done as well as that one, I believe. So let's talk about some of the components. Turf. We start off with turf. It's viewed as an aesthetic asset, plays an important role in the reduction of the water runoff in an urban or suburban property, and typically will contain a significant area of impervious surfaces such as parking lots and sidewalks. The grass has a higher propensity to disperse the water and the ability to take it in and utilize it even quicker and more rapidly than a shrub or a tree or a palm, for example. Healthy turf will actually reduce the amount of runoff as it can process the greater amounts, and increasing the biodegradation of all the organic pollutants that might be created in the parking lots or contaminants in the air or pesticides. This area here, this is, I think, Donald Ross in front of another shopping plaza. A lot of turf in the photo, probably could use a larger bed to shrink that area. But a lot of times now, since that adoption of the code, what we found is based on your square footage of impervious area or parking lot, they're going to increase the area of turf required in order to offset that. So here's the picture of the Gander Mountain site again. Um, Smart design, it should always match the site's characteristics with the client's desires or the requirements of the municipality where it's being constructed. You know, definitely it's going to require a site evaluation, which will help meet the design requirements. Got to take everything into consideration, such as your existing trees that may be there, shade, soil type, pH, the compaction that you're going to create once the site is completed, if there's any slopes in order to lead off into a drainage basin. Um, Most construction activities, as you can imagine, having large dozers and excavators on the site are going to lead to severe compaction. They're also going to end up probably bringing in non-native soils in order to help lift the site or create a base that is adequate to sustain the weight of the new structure. And a lot of these will play into some difficulties created for the landscape maintenance company or installer after the fact. So once you've evaluated the site, the plant selected definitely should be suited to the characteristic. They're going to serve function in terms of their attributes once they're mature versus, initially planted. They should improve the appearance or usefulness by providing shade to parking areas, reduce the heat in those areas, which will then also reduce the cooling cost around the building. They should also be positioned to provide a smooth transition from the structure to the landscape. Screening from the roadways or traffic flow onto and within the property are very important factors. Uh, so getting back to the watering and why that's so important. One of the things that can you know be misjudged or discussed is that plants don't waste water, people do. And it's, just basically having the right understanding of how much water can a plant, tree, palm actually utilize at any given time. Why do we irrigate it? And what are some of the concepts behind why we add supplemental water when we have 50 odd inches of rainfall a year here in South Florida? So most commercial properties, they've modified the soil and the habitat to fit the needs of the site, right? We just talked about that a little bit. They might have to dig a drainage ditch in order to take runoff. So that soil's got to go somewhere. So if they're digging down 10 feet, there's a good chance they're getting down into clays or rocks. So that's going to become a new site prep into the structure. And in order for that property to receive the certificate of occupancy, they have to meet the municipality's requirements. All sounds good, but definitely one of the factors that typically municipalities don't get involved with is the type of controller that is utilized for the irrigation. So let's talk a little bit about controllers. And we're going to, like I said, because there's 6 principles, we're going to touch on all of them a little bit as we go through. Some may pertain to your property, others may not. And hopefully we hit on something that may trigger a question or trigger a comment and or even just a thought process would be great. Most native plants, trees, grasses require anywhere from 40 to 55 inches of irrigation per year, which, as I just mentioned in the previous slide, Florida gets on average 52 to 55. And that's not coincidental that these plants need it. That's why they're native, because they've managed to figure out how to adapt to our soils, to our amount of rainfall. The problem comes in is that rainfall is not spread out evenly over the 12 months. It would be great. Do we just get an inch a week or, 4 inches a month? No, it just doesn't happen that way. So it's really important for the HOAs or condo associations to adopt a smart irrigation system to either utilize a weather station, which are definitely far superior to soil moisture sensors or rain sensors, but any little bit helps. The weather station themselves, they will monitor humidity, rainfall, temperature, evapotranspiration, and they will take all of this information and they will model how much irrigation they need to add or subtract based on the rainfall so far that year, what soil type is there, and the zip code. So using the right system, the design is one part of it. Obviously, having a qualified and knowledgeable installer and to just get the job done. But then it goes a step further. Then you actually then need someone to manage the clock and give the right maintenance to the clock in terms of making sure that the time is set right, that the area of what it's irrigating is set for, or why that matches up, and that's all with uh, doing a zone chart or um, having the ability to type in what that zone is actually irrigating is a big plus. So, but why is all that? What ties in? Why do we want to make sure all that's correct? And one, it's to save the association money. And that's not just on the cost of water if they were using city water, but it's also using the water more efficiently, um, trying to create a healthier, a drought resistant or pest resistant landscape. And, also we want to protect our state's water reserves. We are living on one large aquifer. Everything that passes through, we don't necessarily have soil like up north. You got this rich black soil and a lot of states north of our line. We've got sand. You can dig down. It's very difficult to find rich black, looking compact or not compact, like compost looking soil. But that exists in other states. So it exists in Belglade. It exists in certain parts of the state, but we just don't have it here. There's some websites there on there that are helpful links if you wanted to explore more about that. All right, so our battle, what we battle, aesthetics versus sustainability. And I'm talking here about native material, the Florida friendly principles. The main issues that we find within a community today is the lack of system division. And, a prime example of that would be, for example, a front entrance of a community. So we have these grand entrances, big, beautiful waterfalls, and, we've got maybe some zoysia grass or Bermuda on the islands, in the middle. Then on the left and right side, underneath the sign walls, we typically have shrubs and trees and grass. And then we've got these beds, and the beds were left for annuals to be installed. And everyone loves color. We love color change outs. We love flowers. We're in Florida. We want tropical. So we have these annual beds right in front of, or I should say, just tucked in behind a large area of, say, St. Augustine grass on the sides. We've got Bermuda in the middle, and then we've got some cocoa plum or, Trinettes or Crotons. So we've got all these different things, and then on one side we might have some short saw palmetto, and then in the back we've got a Bismarck palm, or we have foxtails, and we're beautiful landscape design. So what's the problem here? Looks fantastic, right? Well, what we find is that annual bed is not on its own separate drip zone or a mist zone. They are encompassed on the same zone that runs the St. Augustine turf, that runs the native cocoa plum, and then the Bermuda in the middle, which is highly drought tolerant compared to St. Augustine, all on the same zone. It becomes really challenging for the management or the maintenance, not only of the material, but of the person running the irrigation system as well. So everything should really be isolated, separated right from the start, or you will just continually have issues for years on end. We find that zero lot line homes, each home has their own irrigation system. And in the middle, between the two zero lot line sides, or say one has a zero lot line, one has a 3 or 6 foot thing. Each one of them has a row of spray heads spraying away from the home and into what is typically it's like a drainage area, and it's a slightly sloped to either take it to the back of the property or to the front of the property. But that area typically has no sunlight. It is shaded in by, either a single-story home or two-story homes. And what inevitably happens in that area is it becomes soggy, wet. The grass dies because it has no aerobic capabilities. The roots are constantly sitting in water, so they turn into mush and they basically drown. And we end up being, kind of talked about as, oh, you don't know how to maintain this area. Well, no, we end up capping the irrigation on both sides. And then the shade kicks in and it doesn't allow the grass to regrow. So we're constantly, changing out those areas to a bed of rock or drainage rock, so that way it can be walked on from front to back for the pool guys or maintenance or whatever it may be. So that's where we don't want to water the north side of a two-story building because we'll never get sun there. That's what we're talking about with division on an irrigation system. All right, so let's move to fertilizer. So, and these are kind of a little bit in order. Before we want to apply fertilizer, we always need to make sure that our irrigation system is running properly. So that always needs to be checked. And the reason behind that is that fertilizer does need to be watered in. So I won't get too ahead of myself here. Let's talk about the term fertilizer. So it's any substance that contains one or more recognized plant nutrients, and it will either promote the plant growth, control the acidity of the soil or the alkalinity, and it will basically provide soil enrichment. Obviously they can provide other corrective measures to the soil as well, because pesticide can be put inside of a fertilizer, a product to help manage the breakdown of the nutrients. So a lot of things go into a bag of fertilizer. On any typical bag of fertilizer, there's actually a law that dictates what can go on the bag, and what can't, and what has to be quantified and qualified on that bag. And it is called the grader analysis. And what that breaks down to is the NPK, which is the percentage of either nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. And it has to be guaranteed by the manufacturer of the fertilizer. And that guaranteed amount by law has to be contained in each bag of fertilizer that is produced and sold. So on the bag, you're going to have the brand and grade, the name and address of the manufacturer, the analysis, and what are the secondary nutrients, which are known as micros or minors, which most fertilizers should carry. And what is the net weight of that bag of fertilizer, which correlates to the amount of active ingredients that are in them. So some of you, depending on what county you may live in, there's a nitrogen ban, say, for example, in Jupiter or Martin County or St. Lucie, which means you are not allowed to apply any amount of nitrogen within your bag of fertilizer. And it's typically for the months of like June through September. And each municipality may have their own blackout period, but for up there, those are them. And why is that? So the biggest concern being that that's when we get our heaviest amount of rainfall. And it's the fear is that we're going to put down the granular fertilizer, and that evening or afternoon when we get a heavy downpour, and if you're in Broward right now, it's happening. So a little early today, 12:30. it won't allow that granular fertilizer to be run, like basically washed out, end up in a storm drain, end up in a lake or a pond. So that's why they black it out for those months. So you may have heard a landscaper talk about it, or you've gone to Home Depot yourself or Lowe's, and you've gone to buy a bag of fertilizer, and you look at one bag for your turf on the left aisle, and it's $14 a bag. Then you look at the aisle to your right, and that one over there is 38, and you're wondering what this is fertilizer. What can be so different? Well, it's comes down to being based on a number of items. The main one being the solubility of the material. So, for example, if there's a good chance that the $14 bag of fertilizer has a very, very low solubility rate, maybe like 40%, 50%. And what that means is that it is going to break down so much quicker and make that nitrogen available all at once. The goal is to the higher quality fertilizer, the slower the feed of the nutrient that you're trying to get to the root system. Because, just like our bodies ourselves, if we drink one glass of orange juice, is it going to be better if we drink 10 all at once if we're needing a vitamin C boost? Or our body can only break down and utilize a certain amount, and that's the same way that the root system is. And what are some requirements? So here in Florida, we're regulated to basically get down 1 to 2 pounds per 1,000 square foot of the nitrogen in that, and for us, that's quarterly. It says per year. So the 4 to 6 pounds is the kind of maximum allowable rate per year per 1,000 square feet, which correlates to 1 to 2 pounds per application. There are lots of labs out there that can be utilized to test your soil so you know what type of fertilizer to use. And those tests are fairly inexpensive. We're going back about 11 years ago now, it became law that you need to be certified in order to apply a bag of fertilizer. So that is a certification that your landscaper must hold in order to apply it, so that he's not only applying, he or she is applying the right amount, but they know why they're applying it and know that the bag has been calibrated to the spreader. And so applying fertilizer, if there's wondering if there's anything that you need to know, or do you just pour it into your spreader and away you go, you open up the chute and you walk with it, right? So not that simple. Your spreader has to be calibrated so that you do not get more than 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. So that is something that is done in the landscapers' yards. They got to make sure that those settings didn't get knocked off, or they have to adjust it based on the type of fertilizer they're spreading at that particular time of year. But what is the ring of responsibility? So part of the best management practices is if you are fertilizing around a body of water, you need to be at least 10 feet up from the water's edge. If you are using a drop spreader, those are fairly uncommon in our industry, just because they only put out fertilizer directly below the spreader that you're pushing. And that typically will only give you like a 2 to 3 foot wide swath, and it's not very large, whereas a broadcast spreader will probably give you closer to 10 to 12. Rule of thumb: new grass, no fertilizer for at least 30 to 60 days. You want its root system to get established. Though, if you can imagine, that grass was sitting in a beautiful, pristine field somewhere out in Central Florida where it's being really cared for, and where we've got very nutrient-rich soil. Obviously, that was where all the cane fields were, and there's been a lot of time spent making those fields as fertile as possible. Now, if you can imagine, they cut the root, and so it's a shorter root. It's tender, and it's the last thing we want to do is have fertilizer hit that. It'll burn it and kill that root. I'll quickly, fertigation no longer exists. I should probably take it off of the slide. That was a process at one time of putting a liquid fertilizer directly into the irrigation system. Uh, I don't know who thought this out or why they didn't think through, but obviously irrigation systems have nozzles that, because when they turn on, they're under pressure. It will cause a nozzle to vibrate and rotate around inside of the head. And the last thing you want is iron spraying the side of your vehicle or any pesticides or a sidewalk because of staining. So you can imagine the nightmare that communities had that adopted that system. So yeah, it's rarely used right now. We don't really see it. So all right, let's go on to the next one. All right. Mulching. So mulching definitely refers to uh, a topic that is debated heavily in communities, whether or not it's worth the investment. Why do people mulch? So it's simply referred to as the recycling of a material. It extends to grass clippings, leaf droppings, wood products, all acting as a ground cover. I will tell you personally, and I sit on a few different boards within Florida, primarily the Florida Nursery Grower and Landscape Association, and we're kind of all in the same boat where the mulch far exceeds the benefits of what it can do versus the cost. And why is that? It will help prevent a loss of water in the bed itself via, evaporation. It will suppress weed seeds as long as the mulch is applied from 2 to 3 inches of depth. It will regulate the temperature in the soil. It will also stop it from crusting. If we go several months without rain and you were to go out and just, try to dig in a bed, you will notice that it is very hard and crusty, and it will alleviate that crusting if there was a layer of mulch on top. And what happens is the water will not percolate down to those root system if you've got a crust sitting there. Eventually, that mulch will break down and it'll create an organic material, which hence increases the amount of nutrients that is in the actual soil there for that the plant or grass has the ability to take up. Um, you know, there are also plants that, especially annuals, they will provide roots within that system, as well as the soils. And because it's more penetrable to go through the mulch, the plant itself will have more roots and hence being able to absorb more nutrients. So, all right, let's see. Okay. Uh, Maintenance. So we'll talk a little bit about maintenance now. This is just a quirky slide. Once upon a time, you're trying to have fun with your teams, and if it's in the middle of summer and it's brutal and it's just, the guys are grinding, it's hot. We would do funny little promotions within the crews, and basically say to our landscape salesman, like, hey, the first guy to sell a gnome within the landscape package, gets a bonus, or dinner on us, or lunch for the entire crew. Just have fun. Typically, they would pay for it themselves. They would tell the client, hey, listen, I got this promotion going on. If I can, if you sign this job today, I'll pay for the gnome, but I need to take a picture of it in your yard. But but these are not always the case. Sometimes, yes, we'll do something funny like that, but on other occasions, yes, there are people that will put things like that in their bed, and becomes very difficult for maintenance operation, in terms of, weed eating, edging, etc. But what this slide is about is really just to kind of show a nice transition from a bed to turf. It just creates a nice line, nice visual for the plants themselves. All right, so what do we do if we have a large area? What's the best route? Do we mulch it? Do we put plants there? Do we turf it? So this is one of those things where it comes down to a board of directors, a landscape committee, as to what they want to do with that area and budget. A lot of commercial sites, the bed areas will tend to be really narrow. Um, and it's you've got to make a decision. Do I go grass because of its economic nature? It's much less per square foot. It typically does not have to be replaced as quick. Um, but I can tell you from experience, if you've got a really thin bed area, grass will struggle unless you're able to put at least an 18-inch piece, because turf is 18 by 24. Um, Only because the difficulty in cutting it, you're going to have to use a weed eater. Its proximity to the concrete and its ability to disperse the heat. If it's a very thin piece, it's not going to have as much root system, and it's not going to get enough water to keep its temperatures moderated. Uh, the mulch in these areas definitely would be considered, but a lot of times it's rejected just due to it being replenished every few years, or sorry, few months. Um, so a lot of times the shrub or an ornamental grass or something is the correct choice, but each site is going to dictate that. So this was a Home Depot slash Publix parking lot, brand new construction. You can see how white those curbs are. This was an area that they were, I'm sure architects, were asked by the municipality, hey, you're going to have to burn this up. There's homes on the other side. There's a road, traffic. They don't want to be looking into a parking lot. So what happens? The developer creates a berm. They put a hedge at the top, and then they've got to figure out, what do I do with this grade, super steep, right on the other side. So usually they will plant it with grass, and over the next 6 months, the grass is going to struggle to root because the water immediately runs off and away from the root system, and that grass ultimately dies. Then you are left with just dirt. Then it rains, and the dirt gets washed off into the parking lot. And then it's stuck sitting at the base of these curbs, and it becomes unsightly. Um, Not only that, it's usually will be very inorganic or sterile because of the runoff. And they're also extremely difficult to maintain. Running a mower up on those, all the weight shifts to the bottom wheel. You create a rut. Really nothing you can do. And this isn't just in commercial sites. This is in your HOAs. You will find that no matter what the landscaper does, there's only so many patterns they can do in order to alleviate the ruts, because of the steep nature of the actual grade. All right, so here's that same parking lot that just showed you before. It's great that they've got this shade for the sidewalk for the people parking and trying to get into the stores. You got Publix on the right, Home Depot on the left. Um, Now what happens is, because of that shade, if you notice, this sidewalk is already, really gray, almost black. It's because the water sits there due to the shade, which then gets slippery, because of the fungal growth. And you'll notice the grass is already dead. Um, so one, the leaves pile up. Why is that? Because they hire companies to come in and blow the leaves out of the parking lot into the beds. So that smothers the grass. And then the heat from the parking lot, the heat from the concrete is typically 15 to 20 degrees hotter than the turf area. It simply burns the root system. So much easier to contain and keep grass alive if it was lifted in a curb, where it's got more depth of soil to help moderate the root system temperatures. Mowing. Almost all will have a type of St. Augustine, floor tam, palmetto, whatever it may be. It's very important how to maintain this turf. Correct height mowing will definitely help increase the density and the root health. Typically, that is 3.5 to 4 inches. A healthy lawn will help impede storm runoff. The root system is going to ensure that the nutrients are absorbed and not wasted. And if you've got a really healthy turf, you're going to have fewer weeds. Um, the weeds only germinate because sunlight gets to hit them as seeds. If you shade out the weed seeds, they don't have the ability to germinate. So you're going to alleviate the amount of herbicide that you're using within the turf. We kind of, our feeling is on the mowing height, like I said, 3.5 to 4 inches, can never take more than a third off. So, we're talking an inch and a half. And in order to do that, you really need to consider never mowing less than 36 times a year, anywhere from, say, Port St. Lucie, south, kind of Broward area. That's the area we operate in. 36 seems to be the optimal number. 39 is great, for a floating cut, and then 2 to withstand your 5-week months in the summer, typically June and August, or July, August. Uh, anyway, so that's on the mowing frequency. Um, Up north, you cut your grass, you collect the cuttings, because what happens is the cooler temperatures cause that thatch or the grass to fall back in. It eventually will fungus. Here in South Florida, they want the grass to go back into the area that you've cut. It decomposes rapidly and will actually turn into natural fertilizer and organic matter that's going to simply help your soil. So no collection of grass here on Augustine or Floratam, Palmetto, any of those. All right, pruning. Definitely an important maintenance task. It's part of a typical contract. Most communities call for once a month pruning. The odd one we get is like we'll do 11 because we're skipping, say, December potentially for holiday lights, or even January because it's our most dormant part of the year. So a lot of times we can get away with going to 11. And why do we prune? One, we want to improve the health. We want to basically take off any dead material, reduce the risk of failure. Biggest reason is that almost every bush wants to be a tree. So if you just let it keep growing, it will outgrow the spot where it was planted. So we got to control the growth. And if it's a flowering, we don't really, most communities don't allow fruiting trees, so that's not usually a concern. And I can definitely tell you that residents do not want us touching their fruit trees anyway. So the flowering ones, we want to cut at the appropriate months, not to cut off the buds. But definitely, if the plant was selected for the right area, will definitely reduce any type of pruning requirements. But unfortunately, a lot of times they're shoved in rows, and we got to keep them boxed or rounded in order to keep the certain aesthetic that the communities become accustomed to. All right, some common myths. Uh, I like this one. I use my own self. You can't see me, but I shave my head. I'm bald. And there's this myth that everyone will say, "Oh, I'm just going to cut the top of this hedge, and that'll make the bottom thicken up." Well, I tried that. My leg hair didn't get any thicker, so I can tell you it doesn't work. And that's exactly the same with a plant. If you cut the top, it does not make the bottom grow any thicker. I've not tried the reverse. I've not shaved the legs, hoping the head will grow in. Maybe I should. I'm not sure. But I will tell you, the only way you can get your hedge to thicken up at the bottom is if you go in and actually make cuts to any branching system at the bottom of the shrub. Wherever you make a cut, you will get 2 branches come off. So you want to go in and attempt that. It makes sense. Talk to your landscaper about it, but there's usually a reason. If it's thinned at the bottom, it has outgrown its ability to generate branches at that level. It's too old, or it is just simply not getting enough sunlight to generate and maintain the healthy leaf system down there. Another common myth is, I got about 4 of them here. Rocks are like mulch. No, rocks are not like mulch. They are over time, probably a better cost benefit. Um, However, rocks retain heat. They do not provide any organic material as they break down. They cause the actual soil area and root system to be substantially hotter. Hence, the plant is going to require more water or shade in that area to keep them down, keep the temperature down. And it also does not help, activate additional root systems. And then another common myth is if you throw the fertilizer at the base of a shrub, it'll get the nutrients. Well, yes, on a shrub, that's correct because their root system is very much below where they're kept directly. If a plant's 2 foot wide, typically their root system just goes out 2 feet wide. It's called the root shoot ratio, and it correlates the same to trees and palms. So if you were to look up at a palm tree, and let's just say you use a royal palm, for example, 30 feet up, it's got these palm fronds that extend out on both sides, say 12 to 15 feet. Well, that is where their root system is. Those roots are feeding at that 12 to 15 foot out diameter around the palm. So yes, you do not apply fertilizer to the base of a palm or the base of a tree. It needs to go out where the drip line is. That is the active feeding zone of the palms and the trees. Roundup, we can talk about Roundup. It can go both ways. Yes, there have been studies that they will correlate it to cancer-causing properties. However, if you follow the EPA application rates and guidelines, there has not yet been a case proven where it is the direct factor of somebody getting cancer. It's when the products are used outside of the label. And that goes into a number of items with pesticides and fungicides, et cetera. So, and then another one is watering. If I water too much, it definitely can't hurt my plant. And no, that is wrong. You definitely can drown a plant. You can create a fungal situation. The only time you want to add additional water, you will notice the plant start to droop, the leaf will droop, the leaf might close up, and there's really no need to water until the plant has gotten to that point. All right, we'll now move on to pesticides. So we've talked about fertilizer, we've talked about irrigation, we've talked about mowing heights, trimming practices. A lot of communities will either have an IPM practice, or which is integrated pest management, or they may have somebody that comes out and blanket treats preventatively on a certain schedule. If everything that we talked about previously to this slide is managed correctly, hopefully it's going to alleviate the need for pesticides. It will never knock it out 100%. That leads us to the concept of integrated pest management. It's the emphasis on the components of mowing at the right height, trimming at the right times, trimming the right amount, fertilizing with the right products, irrigation, being supplied to the right areas using the right system, whether it be a spray, a rotor, a drip. And if you ended up using the right plant, right place principle in all of the plantings, what obviously encompasses the Florida friendly landscape, and you are optimizing an agronomic program. Hopefully pesticides are no longer required, or spot treating them for when something will, you get a month in February where the temperatures are, 60 degrees here for us. And we happened to fertilize the week before when it was 85. The fertilizer's just kicking in. There got cooler, it rained, and there's the perfect storm of how a fungal bloom is gonna start. And fertilizer is honestly it's like gas on a fire. If you fertilize a fungus patch, and a lot of people see this brown and go, "Oh, my grass is dying, I need to put fertilizer on it." you've just poured gas on the fire. So you really need to know and be able to identify what is causing that brown patch before just treating it. I'm going to leave this one. I've read it in the past, but it's an extremely complex and uh, definition heavy law that applies to the application of pest control. Reading it out doesn't help. The presentation is available. I'm sure Ashley, if when she shares it, if somebody's really into it, they can get into it. So, state of Florida, what are required in order to, one, understand the Florida-friendly principles or best management practices? They've gotten better. So we talked about the adoption of principles back in 2004. Some new requirements are, you've got to have your local occupational license. There are certification for commercial landscape maintenance practices. The FNGLA has about 5 or 6 different certifications available that go from landscape irrigation to certified horticultural professional to maintenance technician to landscape installer, landscape designer. And they've just this year are bringing on a brand new pest control license. And these are all voluntary. The state does not require a landscape maintenance company to have any of these other than an occupational license or an irrigation license if you provide those services or pesticides. But in terms of going out and cutting grass, there's just nothing that the state requires. So the Florida Nursery Grower Landscape Association is pushing this forward so that everybody's on a level playing field, and you should really look for your company to have these certifications in order to feel comfortable that probably your largest monthly expenditure and investment is literally the landscape. So definitely don't take it lightly. And we always appreciate when a community has a committee or a board that is really vested in landscape because we take it seriously. We like that, they do as well. Arborists, if you've got an arbor, if you've got your tree trimming being done, you need to make sure they've got an arborist license. And so anybody now applying herbicide, whether it be Roundup, whether it be fertilization with your the quarterly applications or pesticides, all of those are now licensed practices that will require you to have it. And if not, there's up to a $5,000 fine. So what makes me want to consider using a chemical versus an integrated pest management procedure? So we need to be able to identify the pest and the plant. And then we need to see what life cycle the pest currently is in. So is it an egg? Is it in the pupa stage? Is it a nymph still, or is it an adult? Because that will dictate what product you can use to actually kill it, or eradicate it, or have it bring back the poison to wherever the nest is. So if you're not able to identify that, you really shouldn't be applying anything at all. And then what type of method are we going to use? Are we going to use a cultural method, which would be something like putting aphids? If you had aphids on your hibiscus, you could put ladybugs there. They eat aphids. That's a cultural. You can cut off the area that's affected. Physical, you could simply, like if you've got caterpillars, pick them off and put them in a baggie or relocate them into a nature area, or a biological method. And then you again decide on the method that's most appropriate and come back again after you've determined the method and you've applied it to check and see a few weeks later if it's actually reduced that population. All right, so we're going to show you a couple of things, and I'm sure those of you that are either a board member, resident, those of you that manage property, whether you're a portfolio or on site, you've probably seen it all. Developers will want to give the kind of the best possible appearance they can in order to help sell units. So they will, come up with great designs, great transitions, tiered landscape beds. They'll, hopefully they've got good spacing, and a lot of times they need it to look amazing right up front. So what do? You cram everything in, you make it look like it's been there forever. Um, and that's great. I understand the process, and as homes are built, it gives us the ability to maintain other communities. So for us, we get it. Um, so I'm going to read off to you here a list of some plants and trees. So a Magnolia D.D. Blanchard, they can go 40-foot tall by, say, I don't know, 15 feet wide. Up in Georgia area, they'll go, 80 feet tall by 60-foot wide. Montgomery palms, they'll go 25 feet tall, but they're thin. Bismarcks can go up to 40 feet tall, and they're probably 25 feet wide when they're fully mature. Oak trees, well, everyone's familiar with that. They can, depending on how they're planted and their ability for root systems to grow, 60 feet wide, 50 feet tall. Fishtail clusters, 15 feet wide, 30 feet tall. Traveler palms, same. They're very wide. They're thin, 30 feet tall, 30 feet wide if they have multiple clusters. Ligustrum, typically 8 to 10 feet tall, 8 feet wide. Lady palms are short. And all of this within 4,000 square foot of airspace. And this is what it looks like. So this, all what I just read was planted on a zero lot line side of the house. Basically about, I would say, 12 feet away from the other home. Fortunately enough, we had the ability to see this not long after it was planted and be there, multiple years later when it was all mature and grown in. And this is what it looked like. So overgrown, barely could get through in between the two homes. Hardly any grass survived because it's all shaded. Everything's competing for the nutrients and the light. So everything's stretching and growing taller. And even mentioned, there's Ilex shilling there, there's variegated ginger, there's a lot of other things, but now this is what it should look like. So this is in the same community. This was where the residents decided to change out what they had existing, and they decided to try to go with more native plants, a little bit more ornamental, more structured. You got Parotis palms or Everglade palm, which is very thin there on the left. You've got some arbicola, obviously the grass, and you can see it's not shaded. There's the ability for the grass to take root. So anyway, it's just a great design. Here's another one. 50-foot tall royal palms, literally planted above the driveways, and those things weigh 30 pounds. So you can imagine, the homeowner never parks there. Then you've got that, and then on the left you've got a large cypress that requires no water. So ultimately, something's dying there eventually. Poorly planted oak, been there 10 years, hasn't changed. This is prior to, and I'm just buzzing through real quick. I know we've only got a couple minutes. So this was prior to the adoption of the 2004 ordinances. You can't find a green leaf on that road. This is Okeechobee. It is so hot on that street. There are no trees, palms, nothing. This is Gander Mountain again, just a great job, great transition from a sidewalk area to planting to the hiding the building, creating nice shade and interesting, shadows on the building. This is their parking lot. They've got the raised curbs, so you can see the plants inside are doing well. The trees are flourishing. Just much, much better decision on how to install. This is north side of Donald Ross, native material, low water consumption, hides the buildings, good transition there. You can't even see the plaza. All right, our industry. This is from 2010. I just got back from the landscape conference in Orlando last week. This number is now up to 24 billion, is what the landscape industry brings to the state of Florida. So these numbers have pretty close, not fully doubled, but in 10 years, because that study was from 2020 that I recently got. Um, the number of jobs are up about 40%. There's around 250,000 landscape jobs that are active in the state of Florida. These are the counties with the highest employment. Those are still current. Palm Beach is up slightly. Um, and these are just some, where does that revenue come from? Percent of total. It's mainly HOAs and condo associations. They lead the two top tiers of jobs, landscape, and revenue where it's spent. So, so that is it. So I thank you very much for today. I'm sorry I just rambled on. Definitely very different than doing these in person. So I feel bad that I've just talked at you for the past hour. Um, but I do thank you very much for attending today. I look forward to any feedback. And if we've got any questions, Ashley, if we've got any time, please let me know. I'll jump on and see where I can find them.
We have one good question here. Is drilling into palm and inserting fertilizer a good practice and required so they survive?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. It's becoming more and more of a norm. There's what's known as an arborjet system. We put a 3/8 size drill bit into the side of a palm or tree. It is then plugged and basically leaves a port. So there's a rubber seal where we then use a needle to inject either it be a pesticide, a fungicide, or a fertilizer of some kind. Yes, it is the practice that has to be utilized for the certain application. We prefer, obviously, if we can get it to the root system, that's the best way. What we can't do is if the palm is in concern of getting lethal bronzing or another type of disease, we have to get it into the xylem, into the center of the tree, and that is the preferred method. And using the plug saves any pest or anything else getting into it.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.